Hi, welcome to the installation video for the Epson R3000 PermaJet Eco-Flo system. We'll just go through the box contents to make sure you've got everything that you need. So simple bits and pieces like some gloves to make sure you keep your hands nice and clean in a little bag. You've got the main bulk of the ink system, which has the refillable cartridges with their microchips on the end and obviously the tubing attached. Pop that down. Some white clamps, which we'll go into in a little more detail a little bit later on, but they go on the ink lines once the lines are installed correctly. You have a lid deactivation key. Now we might do a bit of a close-up of this later so you can see exactly what it is, and we'll show you exactly where it fits, but this is a key part of the installation. You've got your 9 PermaJet Image Life inks in their varieties of colours. In the plastic box you have the different coloured caps with their pipes which go down inside the main refillable bottles. White clip, which you should hopefully be able to see just on the side here, might be a little obscured, which just helps keep your tubing nice and neat and tidy. A syringe with the adapter piece already on the end. Sometimes the adapter piece may drop down inside the box, but you're looking for a green adapter piece on the end of the syringe to make sure you can get right up inside that cartridge as you need to. There are 9 different bottles, all with their own individual labels with their part code on them for each of the 9 Image Life colours. And then you should also have an installation CD where you will have run this video from, or you may have picked it up from YouTube. But it's best to have a look on this first just to make sure you're confident with exactly what you're doing and how you're doing it. Other than that, in the box there will be a PermaJet test pack number 1 just to get you started. First things first, you may have chosen to run the printer with the cartridges in place, or you may put the ink system in from scratch. Either or is absolutely fine. It will make no overall difference to the function of the printer. We need to remove the lid, so you will have hopefully opened up your ink cover. As you can see, we've still got our cartridges in here. You should be able to push the lid to the left and lift. Very simply. Bottom left hand corner there's a little lug which sometimes it gets a little bit stuck, but all in all that's as simple and straightforward as that process needs to be. We'll take that away, keep it safe just in case we ever want it in the future. So once we've removed all of our cartridges, we'll just take the last one out now. We recommend keeping hold of them because if you ever have to call out an Epson engineer or have Epson visit your premises and there's a problem with the printer within the first 12 months, they're going to need to see a set of Epson cartridges or use a set of Epson cartridges, part of their protocol. So we'll put on the ink system, which is very simple and straightforward. Just take off the elastic band. Now I line these in the printer just to make it easier to work with them whilst you're priming them. I'm not suggesting that this is the completed installation where they don't have any ink in them, but if we line them up there, then each one, if you separate the tubes about ½ an inch or so, you get a bit more play and flexibility in the tubing. So we'll separate each one of these down a tiny bit, and then you'll notice on the top of each cartridge where the ports join in, they can rotate. So you just rotate them, make sure they're pushed down, but rotate them round so that there are no kinks in the tubing all the way along, and that should give you enough of a setup to work comfortably. We then take the tubing out to the left. I leave about 12 inches and will then chop the tubing off after that, simply to avoid coiling of lots of tubing. It's not absolutely critical, so if you want to leave the tubing the full length, that's not a problem. It depends how you want your setup and what works for you. Just as a practical matter, we'll pop our lid deactivation key in now, so we don't have to think about it later. So the key only goes in one way. You'll see this little lug here and this little shark fin shape here. They go in 2 obvious locations. The third one has a slightly recessed micro switch that it pushes down, but that's it. Once that's in, then you shouldn't hopefully have to remove it during the rest of the installation. So as I mentioned before, we're going to chop off after measuring out about 12 inches from the side of the printer, which is approximately there. We can discard this waste piece. You then have to take the tubing and start to split it apart. So simply, and I say simply, it can be a little fiddly, is get the tubing apart very gently and pull back, normally around 6 inches. You have to do this with each one. It's not a complicated process, but once you've done that on all of them, they're all going to be to the right length and give you good access to the bottles. Right, next stage is to fill each of our square bottles from the round bottles. Put a piece of paper down, and already got my gloves on just in case. So we'll take that lid off. Apologies if I obscure the view at all here, and simply pour one into the other, and you'll notice to fill no more than up to the square shoulder of the bottle. Any more than that and you take the risk of, when you put the lid on, the ink shooting out the top. So put that bottle to one side. Actually, we'll pop the lid on just for now. You then take the relevant cap colour. They all correspond with each different colour that's available. Push the tubing into the base. Hopefully you can all see that quite clearly. And then simply screw that down on top of the bottle nice and tight, and then you go through and complete that with every colour in the set. So with all 9 bottles successfully filled, as I mentioned before, up to the square shoulder, no more than that, each individual coloured cap with its centre pipe attached, we can put these nice and neatly in the plastic tray. As you can see from my white piece of paper, we didn't have any spillages. We try to keep these in order as they are in the machine. So from back right we have yellow, vivid light magenta, light cyan, vivid magenta, cyan, light black, light black, photo black, and matte black. So see nicely in their tray, and then we take our white clamps. I'll just empty those out, and with each individual pipe we'll start with yellow, so one on the very end, thread a white clamp onto that line, and make sure that it's on there tight, and then we'll locate it on the top of each individual bottle. Each pipe pushes onto the central lug of each colour, relevant colour. So starting with yellow, if you work through methodically, making sure that you've got the right tube on top of the right bottle cap, and you can always follow the line back down to the cartridge just to make sure that you've got this exactly right. So once the pipes are accurately attached to the top of each colour, we move on to priming the injectors, a term you may hear us refer to from time to time if you ever phone us up. Priming an injector simply means filling it with ink via syringe. So we take yellow cartridge, and I tend to do this from left to right purely through habit, no other reason, but it just means you can check as you go you're working in sequence and you're getting the right ink coming up the line. So if we take our syringe, pierce the underside, there is a plastic film over that, so don't be frightened to pierce it with the end of the syringe adapter piece. Push down so it's nice and firmly in position, and pull back on the syringe. Now you should see the cartridge filling, and you can turn it round. And you may need at different points to take the syringe out, re-depress the plunger, and then reinsert it and pull it back to get the ink all the way through. The key is filling the cartridge to the point where ink comes into the syringe. So we'll pull back on that a little more, and it's not the fastest of processes, it's probably the longest part of the installation, but you want to make sure that you're not going to leave any excess air in that cartridge that can be avoided. So once we've got a little bit in, we can push the syringe back down, push it back into the cartridge and pull back again, and you should see the ink then start to move further up through the cartridge bit by bit. And hopefully we'll see it then appear in the grey square, which is a metal gauze which stops any unwanted particles creeping through to your print head. And that's a really good indicator to know when the cartridge is almost completely full. So not quite there, so we'll let that syringe out one more time, push it back in, and then, as you can see, it's come through the gauze into your syringe. You don't need to pull through loads of ink, just a small amount to make sure that it's all the way through the cartridge. You can take the syringe out, push the cartridge into place, and then click it down to ensure it's correctly located, and simply move on to the next colour, which will be vivid light magenta. Do all cartridges in sequence and they'll be primed and almost ready to go. So now we can see the colours are all fully primed. So each cartridge is full almost to the top with ink. Don't be worried if there's a small amount of air at the top of each cartridge. That's not a problem at all. It's where any air bubbles are expelled to if they try and make their way down through the cartridge. So we've got our ink in our tubes, each bottle connected. You've got your white clamp, which you can engage if you're not going to use the printer for a significant period of time, normally in excess of a week. So simply squeeze the white clamp shut. That'll stop ink retracting back through the lines. Then before you either turn the printer on or go to use the printer, release the clamp, push them all back down. I tend to push them all down to the bottom so I can see that they've all been disengaged. Now I have already got a white clip on the side of this printer here, but we'll obviously give you your white clip, which you peel the backing off and stick it onto the side of the printer. All it does, if you just release that, put the tubing in, keeps it a little tidy, keeps it out of the way, stops it hanging down from the front of the printer as well. You'll also see in the corner that our lid deactivation key is in, so if you drop the lid down, it doesn't squash your tubes, because the lid deactivation key top, it stops the lid closing all the way down. So we'll open that back up. But that's your system ready to go. So now we'll turn the printer on and get it functioning. With the printer on, all cartridges should be recognised on the display. So when you start printing, and at some point the machine will believe that it's out of ink. That's because the machine can only understand that it has 25 millilitres of ink available, which is a standard R3000 Epson cartridge. So past that point you're going to have to reset, because you have 5 times as much of that available to you. So when the ink flashes up to say that it's empty, and this is only to do when it believes the ink is completely out, with the printer on, remove the lid deactivation key, and we'll take PK as an example. You lift the cartridge out, you then push it back down until it audibly clicks. You push your lid deactivation key back into position. It will say checking ink on the display, which it's just doing now, and then everything will be reset back to full. So that's the installation complete. So we've got all our cartridges in place, all our bottles successfully filled, the white clamps available for each individual colour should you have to engage or disengage them at any point. All colours should be recognised as full from the outset. The reset procedure is very simple and straightforward. We will show you in a separate video how to replace any of the chips on the ends of the cartridge should that be required for whatever particular reason. But all in all, you should have a functioning printer that's going to give you many hours of joy.